China's population declined last year for the first time in 6 decades. This historic turn of events is expected to mark the start of a long-term population decline, and it could have profound implications on the economy, the global economy. Now, the country's National Bureau of Statistics reported the fall of roughly 850,000 citizens for a population of 1.5 billion in 2022. Mainland China hasn't seen numbers this low since 1961. UN experts see China's population shrinking by 109 billion by 2050. Contributing to this decline, the fallout from last month's sudden reversal of President Xi's strict COVID-0 policies and deaths outnumbered births. 9.5 million people were born in China last year, while 10.5 million people died. It's probably even worse than that. Now, also, China implemented a one-child policy from 1980 to 2015, and this was in response to the CCP's concerns about social and economic consequences that they saw with rapid population growth. But the consequences have been devastating. There are about 100 million more women in China than men right now. China's economic growth in 2022 also slumped 3%, one of its worst levels of GDP growth in history in the nation's history. The fourth quarter was hit hard by COVID mandates and a property market slump. Moody's Analytics says China's 2023 will be bumpy, and that might be putting it mildly. Joining us now for more insight and analysis on all this is Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China, and something Gordon's been talking about for a very long time. You know, this is an inevitability, Gordon. When you look at China's population and their demographic challenges, the only question is how bad it's going to be.
Yes, and it's going to be about 1 billion people they will lose between now and the turn of the century. This is going to be the steepest demographic decline in history in the absence of war or disease. And we just don't know how China will be able to deal with it because we haven't seen this before. And I think that essentially that Beijing is realizing that all of their problems are going to be magnified by a declining population because the country is going to be different. It is going to be a much smaller place.
And Gordon, when we hear that China had only 3% GDP last year, what do you think the actual real number is? Because we know China often misstates what their economic numbers are.
It had to be somewhere around zero, and it could even have contracted last year because the fourth quarter was a disaster. And right now we see China also contracting. So the underlying numbers point to a shrinking economy. Now, of course, Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, can't admit that because his main attempt to get what he wants is intimidation. And you can't intimidate others when your economy is contracting and your demography is collapsing.
And, you know, I was also reading today, Gordon, about the psychological impact this is having on the Chinese. And it might even be true now that the Indian population has surpassed the Chinese population. But in the psyche of the Chinese, if they're not the largest population in the world, what does that do for them as a superpower?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a Chinese household in the U.S., not in China. But I can tell you that my dad took really great pride in being part of the world's biggest tribe. And Chinese, they look down on Indians. And this is going to be a fundamental mistake because by the middle of this century, about 2050 or so, India will have a population about 900 million people greater than China. And this is really going to be psychologically very different. There are a lot of Chinese strategists right now who believe that this is the moment to break up India, because if they don't do it now, they'll never be able to do it because India will outpace China.
Yeah, and we have seen military conflicts on the Chinese-Indian border in recent months and years. We'll watch that very closely and see what comes of it. And of course, you know, this is something to watch in China as well. But Gordon, we also wanted to get your take on Hunter Biden's laptop and the documents debacle and what we're learning about these $50,000 a month rent payments to the Biden house and also to the office where Hunter Biden worked apparently, and so did some of his colleagues from this Chinese energy company, CEFC. Now, the allegations that some are making is that the money was being funneled from China through these rent payments to the Biden family. What's your take on this?
Yeah, when the amounts are identical, it is hard to draw any other conclusion. There is just so much here in that laptop. And, you know, Miranda Devine of the New York Post has been finding these nuggets. And this one is really telling about the pass-through of money. She's also pointed out that that Hunter Biden on a form listed himself as the owner of the house where those documents in the Corvette are. And that is really striking as well. Now, of course, I think that was a false statement. Probably his father owned it. But nonetheless, that undercuts his dad's argument that that place was secure.
Yeah, there's so much here, Gordon. You know what they say, when there's smoke, there is often fire. We'll keep pulling on these threads as well. Great to see you, Gordon Chang. Take care.
Thank you so much, John.
Hey guys, it's Rob Carson. Your retirement funds are being threatened with even more losses from record inflation, recession, and skyrocketing interest rates. Fortunately, the highly trained specialists at American Hartford Gold can show you how to protect your savings and retirement accounts by diversifying your portfolio with physical gold and silver. If you call them right now as a special offer, they will give you a free gold coin on your first qualifying order, so don't wait. Call 866-935-4309. That's 866-935-4309, or text Newsmax to 65532. That's Newsmax to 65532.